So one of my favorite things to do, you guys know, is to flip cards. So this was the original card that I saw online from Stampin' Chick Creations. And I just thought it was so fun and I kind of loved it. And I was like, how can I flip this into a fun one-page layout? And so hopefully you all saw that this was my version of how I flipped this card, so that I could use it on a 12 by 12 layout. And then I went ahead and I made a second version when I created the sketch instructions, which is here. So you can really use this with any kind of paper, any kind of collection. So today I decided, when I'm going to recreate this, I want to do something really different, because both of these were kind of celebratory events where you could kind of use a present, and I felt like this kind of reflected the ribbon and the present. And I thought, well, what will it look like if we use something that's not really a celebratory collection? What will that look like? How will that feel? And so tonight I'm going to go ahead and I pulled out my Lakeside Memories paper pack. And the first thing that you have to do is you have to choose some designer papers. So in my case, you're going to need a main background page, and I decided I was going to use wood grain. And then you're going to need a paper that you can use to frame your page in, and I'm going to just choose a dark green cardstock to do my frame with. And then you need a designer sheet of paper to make your blades of your windmill, or the long arms of your windmill. I'm going to try this plaid. And then you need really just a scrap to do the actual blades of the windmill. So that's pretty much what you're going to need in order to create this layout. Does that make sense? Everybody good? So we're going to go ahead and get started. And I don't know if everybody kind of follows me on Facebook, but this week I did a throwback tooltip, and it was on how you cut a frame. And so we're going to start with that today, and I'm just going to do a quick review. When you look at your Creative Memories trimmer, right here, there's a white line. And from that white line to the edge of your casing unit is 1 inch. So if you want to cut a 1-inch frame, all you have to do is line up the edge of your casing unit with the edge of your paper, and that's 1 inch. So what we do, the first thing you do is you line up the edge of your paper to 1 inch. Then you line the casing edge to the edge of your paper, push down, slide all the way up to where the edge is on the top of your paper up here. And then we take it and you rotate, and you're going to do the same thing 4 times, and that cuts out a 1-inch frame. And that's the first thing that you want to do. So then you should end up with a 1-inch frame, and then you have your inside. This inside we can use for mats and other parts on our design. Now we're going to get our base page, and we're going to cut off a 1/4 of an inch, or a 1/4 of an inch. That's the edge of your gray cutting mat right here. Then we're going to rotate it 90 degrees and cut off another 1/4 inch. These 2 1/4-inch pieces are scrap. You can move those out of the way. Now we're going to adhere that page we just cut onto our frame, and you're going to have just a little peek of it showing on the edge. This is going to become the base page of your layout. And if you would want a little bit more showing, you could cut it bigger, but I just like that little tiny peek. So once you get this adhered, now we're going to do some cutting, and this cutting is going to depend completely on the paper that you chose for your backgrounds. If you chose a non-directional piece of paper, it does not matter. If you chose a directional piece of paper, which is what I did here with my balloons, how we cut the next piece of paper is really important, because I wanted all of my balloons to be floating up. I didn't want them going left, right, and all over the place. I did the same thing with this paper, which again were the caps, and they were all kind of a directional paper. So I have plaid this time. It really doesn't matter. It's not really directional, but I'm going to cut it like it is directional, just so you guys understand what I mean when we're cutting this, right? So I'm going to put a little piece of washi tape on this way so that you guys can see. And I'm going to write top. And this is going to become the top of my page, and this will be the bottom of my page. All right. So when I'm talking about how we rotate that, know that this is the top of my page if this were a directional piece of paper. Okay, does that make sense? We're going to make 4 cuts for our pinwheel arms. 2 of the cuts are going to be horizontal and 2 of the cuts are going to be vertical, and these are the measurements that we're going to cut them. If you are using a directional piece of paper, it's really important that you cut them horizontally first, then vertically, then horizontally, then vertically. Because if you don't cut them in this order, you won't have enough length when you get to your longer pieces. So I'm going to just put this right here so you can see. So this is the top of my paper. I'm making my first cut, which is a horizontal cut. This is the top. I want my paper, that arm, to run horizontally. So I have to turn my paper 90 degrees this way. So the top of my paper is pointing towards the left. And I'm going to line this piece of paper up at 1.5 inches. If it's a non-directional paper, it doesn't matter. You're just lining it up at 1.5 inches. But if it is a directional paper, you want it pointing towards the left, line it up at 1.5, cut a 1.5 strip. Then I'm going to want to cut it at 9.5. This is my first arm. It's a horizontal arm. All right. Now the next arm that we're going to cut is vertical. My paper here, remember this is the top. I'm pointing here is the top. I want to rotate it 90 degrees so that it's facing back the correct way with the top at the top. And I'm going to line it up at 1.5 inches. And I'm going to make a cut. And then it needs to be 8 inches long. So I'm going to cut it 8 inches. This is my first long vertical piece. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to rotate it. I'm doing a horizontal piece, so I'm going to rotate it 90 degrees. Remember, this is still my top. I'm lining it up at 1.5 inches, making my third 1.5 inch cut. This time I'm cutting at 5.5 inches. That is my second horizontal piece. All right, we have one last arm to make. Again, I'm rotating it 90 degrees. My top is back at the top. I'm lining it up at 1.5 inches. This all becomes scrap. It's a nice, beautiful square for scrap. This one I'm cutting at 5.5 inches. These pieces you cut off are all scrap. So what you should end up with are 2 vertical pieces and 2 horizontal pieces. If they're directional, they should all be facing the right direction when it looks like this on your page. If it's non-directional, it really doesn't matter. All right. So the next step that I did was when I was working on my page, I decided that I needed a little pop just to give some more dimension. So the next piece that you want to do is you want to choose a decorative blade if you have a decorative blade. If you have decorative scissors, you could use decorative scissors. If you wanted to tear, you could tear. Anything like that that you would want to do that would just give your arms a little decorative piece. So in this case, this is what we're doing. We're doing this decorative piece that I have right here on my layout. And so this is an outdoor page, and I like the deco blade when I do outdoor pages. So I'm going to replace my straight blade with the decorative blade. And then I have a scrap piece of this green that I used on the background. And what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and cut some strips that we can use to decorate our arms with. And I'm cutting them at 1/4 inch. So if I line my first straight edge up and cut it at 1/4 inch, that gives me my very first strip. I can rotate my paper and do the same thing. You're going to want 6 strips total. So once I have 2 sides decorated, then I switch to my straight blade, and now I can just do a straight cut. And that gives me 4 edges, and then I need to replace again with my deco blade to do one final cut. That gives me number 5. And then if I switch one more time to my straight blade, that'll give me number 6. So I end up with 6 decorative strips that we can now use to decorate our pages. Or not our pages, our arms here. I don't know what we want to call these, the arms of our pinwheel, maybe. You can see I'm just adding a little bit of an edge onto my arm. Just helps give it a little pizzazz, you guys. It's about adding dimension to make your page just a little bit more exciting. And that's all that we're doing here. You don't have to do it, but I just think it really added to the page to do it. So you're going to do this with all 4 arms so that you end up with pretty arms like that. This is what you should end up with once you get them decorated. So the last thing that you're going to need, I'm just gonna talk. I won't get started, but the last thing that you're gonna need is you're gonna need the blades for your windmill or your pinwheel. And I would recommend a contrasting color. On this windmill, I had originally had a black decorative piece of paper, and that's what I actually used when I did the instructions. But when I put the blades on, it wasn't distinguishing enough to make them pop off the page. So I had to come back, and then I found this pretty gold paper. I found a scrap of that I would use. So I would recommend that when you are looking at what you want your windmill to do, that you choose a contrasting color so that the windmill will really pop off of the page. So in my case, with these plaids, I'm going to use this blue because it will pop off. So you're going to need a scrap of blue, and we're going to cut 2 1.5 inch squares. So I just happen to have this teensy tiny little scrap, which is exactly 1.5 inches. which makes it very convenient for me. So if you have scraps, you're just cutting two 1.5-inch squares. Then once you have those squares cut, you're going to center them on your line on the diagonal. So we're going from corner to corner to make two triangles. I don't know if you guys can see, but I'm just lining up my corners on the dashed line. Hard to see. And I'm going to cut two triangles. And I'm going to do it with the other square also. So in the end, I end up with 4 triangles. This is what's going to become the blade on our windmill. And that's it for cutting. Now it's to the fun part. It's to the adhering part. And I am going to secure I just use a little bit of repo right in the center of my page just to secure it. And I have the new fancy Creative Memory straight ruler. If you have that, it's very helpful for this layout. If you don't have that and you have another straight edge ruler, that will be very helpful for you. What you're going to want to do is you're going to line this bottom edge on the 4-inch line across from the top. So here it's 8 inches and here it's 4 inches. And I'm lining this straight. And then I'm going to take my short horizontal piece and I'm going to adhere it right underneath with this is important. If you have repositionable tape runner, you want to use that because we're going to do a little weaving action. So that means we're going to have to be able to lift up different areas of our strips as we get to them. Okay, once you get that adhered, you're going to take your ruler and you're going to again go from the left side and line it up at 4 inches. So it'll be 4 inches and 8 inches on the left-hand side. And this time we're going to take our longest vertical strip and you're going to adhere this and you're going to adhere the tip of this onto the very tip of your horizontal. So it looks like this. So now we're still going to line up at the 4 and the 8 inches, but this time instead of having the right edge of my ruler, I'm going to line it up with the left edge of my ruler. So I'm still at the 4 and the 8, but I'm on the left side of my ruler this time. And I'm taking the shorter vertical piece. And I'm just going to put a little repo right in the center of this one. And I'm going to line it up at the edge of my paper here. And now this is where the fun begins. We're going to weave. So in order to weave, I've got to lift these two up. And this gets tucked under and it gets put back down. So the very tip of this piece is underneath now. So this gets lined up 4 and 8. Adhere it in the center. Move your ruler out of the way. Lift these two pieces up. Tuck it underneath like this. We have one more arm. Again, we're going to line up at the 4 and the 8. But this time we're lining it instead of lining it this way at 4 and 8, we're going to line it on the top side at 4 and 8. And again, we're going to do some weaving. So we're going to adhere it on the edge. And now this time, we're going to pull up this piece that we just laid down, and we're going to tuck it underneath this piece. So we end up with a weaved knot in the center. And then you can go back and you can adhere all of your arms down, make sure all your arms are secure. All right, so the last thing that we have to add to our page is we have to add the blades to our page. And this becomes a little bit of designer's choice. So currently right now we have the decorative edges that we put on there, and you can absolutely adhere your blade with those decorative edges if you would like to. So it would look like that, but I think that detracts. So for me, what I did was I went ahead and I removed those decorative edges with my scissors. So I literally just snipped right along here and removed them. And there was probably an easier way to do it, but I didn't really know an easier way to tell you all how to do that. So if you can see, I just removed them, and I just go around the windmill and line it up with my edge, just do a little snip and then take it off. But if you don't mind it there, you are more than welcome to leave it there. But for me, I don't like it, so I remove it. So now I don't have that decorative piece separating. Again, that's a designer's choice. That's up to you. The other part that's a designer choice is your actual blades. If you look at my original here, I don't know if you can tell, but I curved the edges of my blade just to give it a little bit of dimension. And I also popped it up with a little bit of foam tape on these two sides. I didn't do all four, I just did the two sides. So to give it, I did the same thing with this one. I just wanted to give it a little tiny bit of movement. So I just curled the edge and then popped it up with foam tape. So to curl my edges, I just use a pencil and I just kind of wrap it around a little bit. And that just gives it a little tiny bit of a curl so that when I put it on, it gives it a little bit of a curl on my page. Again, that's designer's choice. You don't have to do that. You can just put them flat if you just want them flat. I like them to have a little bit more dimension. So I give them a little tiny bit of a curl. And what you're going to do is you're going to line them up on the edge, the tips of each of those arms so that the points are in the center. And then I'll look for a piece to put in the middle, just to give it a little highlight. And for me, I like a little dimension, so I have a little bit of foam tape, these little tiny squares, and I just stick them right underneath the tips like this and adhere them down, and that just gives it a tiny little bit of lift off of the page. Just like that. What you want to line it up on is you want to line it up on your ribbon, right? So mine is lined up on my ribbon. If you look close here, I have a little bit, they're not touching perfectly in the center. I have a little bit of a space in the center, but that's not going to matter because I'm going to put an embellishment right in the center. So like on this one, I put a star in the center. And on this one, I put this little fancy sun with a little embellishment in the center. So you're wanting to line it up along your ribbon. And if you line that 1.5 along your ribbon, you're going to end up with a tiny little space in the center. And that's okay because we're going to stick an embellishment right there. Basically where we are is what we're going to do with our pictures and our embellishing. So I just want to show you on this one. I did a bunch of different pictures. I did a 4x6, and then I did a 3x4, and then I did two that were at 2¼ inches by 2¼ inch squares. So that's just how I laid this one out. On this one, I did two smaller horizontal pictures at 5.5 and 3.5. And again, I tucked this 2.5 by 2¼ in here. What's nice about this landscape is you can pretty much choose whatever kind of size pictures that you want to put on here, right? It's one of those layouts that I love. That's a wide open landscape. So you can put pictures here, you can put some pictures here, you can tuck one in up here. I thought it would be fun this time to rotate my sketch this direction just to do something a little bit different. And then I pulled a 4x6 and then a 5x5 and a 3.5x5 fits perfectly in this little square down here. And then I thought I would tuck, instead of tucking all the way over here, I would just tuck one this way. So this time I'm going to use this as my picture landscape, just to do something a little bit different. And then I could have done green mats, and I thought about doing green. Remember, you have this square that we cut that you can use for your mats. But I just wanted to add a little bit more color and to pull a little bit more blue. So I went ahead and cut mats for mine that are blue that I could use just to bring in some more blue color into mine. I think I'm going to go ahead and do this. And I have, these are my embellishments that I have. And then I have some stickers. This is all from the Lakeside collection that I'm using. I have this big space here, and I know that I had these canoes. I thought putting a canoe here would be fun, maybe. For some reason, I just always like a little square down here. I'm just playing with embellishments at this time. This is what I just call, I'm just auditioning different embellishments to see what I like, what I think looks good. What else? Need to add some green. Green up here. Maybe a little rock. And I need to put something in the center. I'm not sure what I have here that I really like in the center. I have rocks. I'm not sure that I'm gonna love a rock in the middle. Maybe I stack some rocks in the center. I need to add some more yellow on here, but there's not a lot of yellow left in these embellishments. Sunscreen, maybe? I don't know. Might have to make a little yellow something. That's what I have for mine today.
So thank you so much for joining me tonight. I appreciate it. And if you made this layout, please post it. I'd love to see it. Thanks.